All right, guys, these are your notes for Thursday, April 16th. Remember that you do need to know one of these three charts. Today we are going to be doing the same thing that we are doing, and then I'm going to have you guys work on your review. You have Thursday and Friday to work on your review. You just need to have it done before you take your quiz. And again, this is all that's going to be on your review, just exact values. So on number 1, it asks us for the sine of 30 degrees. We know this is our 30-degree reference angle. Sine goes second, so our answer is 1/2. Tangent of pi over 4. We know pi over 4 is associated with 45 degrees. So our reference angle is 45 degrees. We're looking at the point square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Tangent is sine over cosine. And square root of 2 over 2 divided by square root of 2 over 2 is just 1. Number 3, sine of 60 at 60 degrees. Oh, the first 3 problems are the same as yesterday, but the rest are different, so don't think you're doing the same thing again. Sine of 60, this is our 60-degree reference angle point, and sine is second, so that would be the square root of 3 over 2. Cotangent of pi halves. So pi halves is here. Remember full pi, so that's pi halves. 0, 1 is the point we're looking at. Cotangent, remember cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine. So cotangent is cosine over sine. So that's 0 over 1, which is 0. Next, we're looking at secant of 120. 120 is in the second quadrant. Right here, 120, we go 90, and then an extra 30 degrees. We're 60 degrees away from the x-axis. So our reference angle is 60 degrees, which means we're looking at this point. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and in the second quadrant, because we're in the second quadrant, only sine is positive, so cosine is negative, which means our answer is negative. And the cosine at 60 degrees, cosine goes first, is 1/2. This is 1 over 1/2, which would just give us -1 times the reciprocal of 1/2, which is -2. Cosecant of 135. So that puts us in the second quadrant after we rotate 90 and 45 more. We're 45 degrees away from the x-axis, so our reference angle is 45 degrees. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. And in the second quadrant, which is where we are, the sine is positive. So our answer is positive, and we would look at the 45-degree reference angle. Cosecant is 1 over sine. Sine goes second, so that's 1 over the square root of 2 over 2, which would just be 1 times 2 over the square root of 2. And that gives us 2 over the square root of 2. But we know we can't have a radical in the denominator, so we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 2, and that gives us 2 square roots of 2 over 2, which is just the square root of 2. Number 7, 5 pi over 6. 5 pi over 6 is just pi over 6 short of a full pi, which puts us in the second quadrant. 4 pi over 6 away, that's a 30-degree reference angle. Sine is positive in the second quadrant. And if we go to our 30-degree reference angle, sine goes second, our answer is 1/2. Tangent of pi. This is 1/2 a pi, 2 pi, so a whole pi is here. Tangent is sine over cosine, which sine goes second, so that's 0 over -1, which is just 0. Cotangent of 7 pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6 is just pi over 6 more than 1 full pi. This is 1 full pi rotation, and we rotate pi over 6 more. That gives us a 30-degree reference angle. So we're looking at this point right here. We are in the third quadrant, and in the third quadrant, the tangent is positive. Since cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, it is also positive. And tangent is sine over cosine, which is second over first. So on this one, we are going to do the reciprocal of that. So it's cosine over sine. So that's square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. Again, we when we divide by a fraction, we multiply by its reciprocal. And that leaves us with the square root of 3. Secant of 225, let's sketch that. 225 degrees is going to be 90, 180, and go another 45 to get here. That puts us in the third quadrant. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. And in the third quadrant, only tangent is positive, which means the cosine is negative. Now, if the cosine, since we know the cosine is negative, the next thing we need to do is find our reference angle. We rotated 180 and then went 45 degrees more away from our x-axis. So our reference angle is 45 degrees, which means we're looking at this point, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. Now, secant is 1 over the cosine. The cosine is square root of 2 over 2, so that's 1 over the square root of 2 over 2, which means we will just have negative 1 times the reciprocal of the square root of 2 over 2, which is 2 over the square root of 2. That gives us negative 2 over the square root of 2. And then we have to rationalize our denominator by multiplying by the square root of 2. We get negative 2 square root of 2 over 2. So our final answer is just the square root, negative square root of 2. Okay, I don't know. Let me see how much time we have. Okay, we may be able to get through all these, but I want to do some of the tougher ones for sure. So let's go ahead and skip to 26 and make sure we get these last 2 rows done. And if we have time, we will come back, okay? So I'm going to scoot you guys down. All right, so let me make sure it's clear. Okay, number 26, cosecant of 270. 270, let's do a little rotation, 90, 180, 270, okay? That puts us at this point right here, 0, negative 1. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, okay? And sine at 270 is negative 1. So that's 1 divided by negative 1, which is just negative 1. The sine of 2 pi, so that is 1 full rotation. That puts us here at the point 1, 0. Sine is second, so our answer is 0. Cosine of 31 pi over 6, okay? So let's count this out in pies. So 1 full pi would be 6 pi over 6. Probably need to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so that's 6 pi over 6, 12 pi over 6, which is 2 pi, right? 18 pi over 6, 24 pi over 6, 30 pi over 6, and then we go pi over 6 more, and that puts us in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, only tangent is positive, which means our answer is negative. We went pi over 6 past the x-axis, which means that's a 30-degree reference angle. And we're going to look at this point, the square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Now, cosine goes first, so that's just going to give us square root of 3 over 2. Sine goes second, cosine goes first. All right, number 29, negative cotangent, or cotangent of negative 45. So remember that when we have negative angles or negative radians, we are rotating clockwise. So we're going to go this way, 45 degrees. We're 45 degrees away from the x-axis, so that's our reference angle. We're looking at this point, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. And we need to say, okay, cotangent's the reciprocal of tangent, and in the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive, which means tangent is negative, so our answer is negative. And cotangent is, again, the reciprocal of tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine, so cotangent is cosine over sine, but it doesn't matter here since they're the same. We know anything divided by itself is just 1, but since this is negative, our answer is negative 1. Okay, this is cosecant of 1080, so let's do a little rotation here, or a lot of rotations here. Okay, so that would be 360. That would be 720. And if we did another 360-degree rotation, that would put us at 1,080 degrees, which is right here at the point 10. Remember, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Sine goes second, which is 0. So 1 over 0 is undefined. 31, the sine of 390. So let's do some rotation here. That's a full 360. And then there's 30 more degrees to go. We're here in the first quadrant, so everything including sine is positive in the first quadrant. And we're looking at our 30-degree reference angle. Sine goes second, so your answer is 1/2. Okay, tangent of 9 pi over 4. Okay, so that's going to be, we'll count them off in full pi, so that's 4 pi over 4. This would be 8 pi over 4. And we go another pi over 4 to put us right there at 45-degree reference angle in the first quadrant. So we're going to look here, and tangent is sine over cosine, and the square root of 2 over 2 divided by the square root of 2 over 2 is 1. Sine of 420. So let's rotate. That would be a full 360-degree rotation, and then we're going to rotate another 60 degrees. That puts us here in the first quadrant. Our reference angle, again, remember the reference angle is the angle formed by the terminal side of your angle in the x-axis, and here the reference angle is 60 degrees. So we are looking at the point 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Sine goes second, so our answer is the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, cotangent of negative pi halves. Remember that negative pi halves is, I should use a different color, rotating clockwise. Okay, this would be a full pi. This is half of a pi. So we're right here on the y-axis at the point 0, -1. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine. So cotangent is cosine over sine. 0 over -1, which is just 0. Secant of negative 240. All right, so remember, if we have a negative angle or negative radians, we are rotating clockwise. So that's -90, -180, and then we'd have to rotate another 60 degrees, which means we are 60 degrees away from our x-axis, so our reference angle is 60 degrees. In the second quadrant, only sine is positive, and since the secant is the reciprocal of cosine, that means that our secant, this is going to be negative, and we need to find cosine of 60 degrees. Remember, cosine goes first, so that's -1 divided by 1/2. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to write sideways. And that gives us -1 times the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2 over 1. So our answer is -2. Okay, I think we have time to do a few more problems. Let's see if I see one that's harder than another one. Okay, we can start back at this row. Cosecant of 240. So we're rotating 90, 180, and then 60 more degrees to get to 240. We're in the third quadrant, and in the third quadrant, the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, and in the third quadrant, sine is negative because only tangent is positive. So our answer is going to be negative, and since we're 60 degrees away from the x-axis, our reference angle is 60 degrees, which means we're looking at this point. The sine goes second, so the sine is square root of 3 over 2. So 1 over the square root of 3 over 2, which will, remember, when we divide by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So that's -1 times 2 over the square root of 3, which is -2 over the square root of 3, and then we multiply by, that's a times, the square root of 3, square root of 3, and we get our final answer, which is negative 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Number 12, sine of 3 pi over 2. So remember that this is a 3 pi over 2. That would be 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, and 1 pi over 2, I'm sorry, 2 pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. So we end up at this point right here, 0, negative 1, and sine goes second. So our answer is just negative 1. All right, tangent of 300. Okay, so that's 90, 180, 270. We go an additional 30 degrees. Our reference angle is not 30 degrees. Our reference angle is the angle made by the terminal side of our angle in the x-axis. So our reference angle is actually 60 degrees here. In the fourth quadrant, only cosine is positive, so our tangent is negative. Tangent, we're looking at this point, since our reference angle is 60 degrees, tangent is sine over cosine. So that means that tangent is the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. When we divide by a fraction, it's the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of 1 over 2, which is 2 over 1. The 2's cancel, and our answer is just negative square roots of 3. Okay, I think that is good. I will still post a key with all the answers to this, front and back. The homework is going to be 1 through 35, and I know that's a lot of problems, but some of these can go by fast, and you guys have 2 days to do this. You'll have Thursday and Friday to work on this, and I just want you guys to be really prepared for your quiz. I will set up a few Google Meets. Hopefully you guys will be able to come to those if you have any questions. And remember, if you ever have any questions, you can always just shoot me a message on Schoology. All right, thanks guys.